right, let's dig into it. Let's have a conversation and let's talk about Farmageddon Friday when it comes to positional breakdowns. We did the offense basically in the month of June. You want to dig into those conversations, you can check out either Lockdown Cyclones or Lockdown Kansas State. They have them in there. But we're going to dig into the defense first on this one today, and we're going to talk about defensive backs. The secondary. The reason we did that is because you got the free safeties for Freedom Friday for the 4th of July. Usually we start from the bottom, make our way up in the trenches, but I thought that'd be a cool way to do it on the 4th of July today. There's just a lot of fun things with this secondary group for Kansas State, but I want to hear what Iowa State has as well. Iowa State secondary, can they be an interesting group? That's what I really want to know this year. Take me through the cornerbacks. Let's start with the corner side first. What do you think about them? Can they protect, for example, week 0, the size? Can they stop the size of Kansas State's receivers in Dublin, Ireland?
I think that the biggest thing we got to do here when talking about Iowa State secondary is first realize the amount, or I guess the value of guys that Iowa State lost last season. I think it would probably be professional negligence, and I would be risking my job if I didn't mention Bo Freeler last season. One of the, arguably, from the sounds of it, the greatest leader in Iowa State football history. A very, very good, I believe he was a strong safety, but kind of played all over, very quick, made a lot of plays for Iowa State. But realistically, it seemed like he was a leader in that locker room. Obviously, Darian Porter, another guy that was very, very good for Iowa State. Now, I'm not going to reminisce too much on those guys, but I do think it's important to note, because the biggest thing that I am, and I know you asked about the cornerbacks, but I just have to clear this up. The first thing that comes to mind when talking about Iowa State secondary is leadership. And it's unfortunately not right now about how good it is. It's about a question mark. Based on Deion Broomfield's media availability, it was a couple months ago at this point. Really, it was during spring ball, really talking about, like, we're not really sure who's going to be kind of at the top of this leadership for Iowa State. Is it, Marcus Neal? Is it Tayshaun James? Is it Jontez Williams? Like, we're not entirely sure. It's kind of open right now. We're like it's creating this really great competitive environment, which is very good. But that's been the one thing. And it's hard to say, but if I had to pick one area for Iowa State that I had like a question mark of the entire team, it would probably be the secondary. Just because I don't think it's a talent issue, but leadership. And it seems like maybe they're, I hate the word immature, but it seemed like they were kind of alluding to that. And so I want to see them, really kind of fall into the game. And Deion Broomfield did mention, like their summer school that they're doing, football summer school, whatever, teaching players like all the fundamentals, formations. What are you identifying? Where are you lining up? What does that give you advantage in this position? What are you seeing, like, pre-snap motions, all this kind of things, really depth, increasing the depth of knowledge of this secondary. I think that's a great spot to start. And then when you let the secondary loose out there, they can make plays. Iowa State is returning, I believe it's 53%, 8 of the interceptions from last year. I don't have a doubt that they'll be out there and able to play very well. I don't know for sure if they'll be that top 3, top 5 secondary in football. That was kind of Iowa State's thing last year, especially defensively. However, I know I'm rambling here, but I'm trying to get all my points in. I do think that Iowa State's defensive line this year, which we have not talked about, we will, is going to be significantly better. And when they put more pressure on the quarterback, that allows the secondary to not have to cover as long, right? So as a byproduct of not having to cover as long, you can kind of see where the sliders are going to balance out. Maybe the talent isn't quite as there, but they don't have to play as hard. We're kind of at that same level of output, if you will. I do think Iowa State is going to be really solid. I just need to see and find out who is going to be that leader and how are they going to get it done out there on the field, because the secondary, very tough position to play.
Correlation between defensive line, pass rush, making mistakes for the secondary coming hand in hand. So I'm glad you brought that up. Leadership sounds like a big deal, but when you look at who they're bringing to media days, and just a little taste, I know you and I are both going to have independent segments coming up at the beginning of next week, kind of previewing media days as we get closer on Tuesday and Wednesday. I think I know on Kansas State, you're going to get a Monday episode for that, kind of talking about it. I'm sure you're going to do something as well. But defensive backs Jeremiah Cooper and defensive back Jontez Williams is showing up to media days. Usually you bring either your seniors or your leaders, either way, that usually come into play. Out of the 5 players, 2 of them are defensive backs. Does that make you feel a little bit better about that?
Oh yeah, no, I'm not like super concerned, and it's the same. I think it's the same conversation we had last week. Can't remember when I said this. It was one of those where like, if I had to pick one, it would be the secondary. It's just because the rest of the team is so good. Like that's really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. It's not like I think this secondary is going to get cooked every single game. I'm not saying that. It's just that if I had to pick one, it would be that. And it's also like all of those comments were made in spring ball. Let's put some context on that and understand that that's months away from any meaningful football games. So, not even fall camp, months away from fall camp. So, I'm not concerned about the leadership so much so as I just want to know who it is. I want to know that they've got that ironed out. Like, that's my only holdup with this group. I know they'll get it done. I know there will be somebody out there that's getting the job done and really leading the group. Like, that's what it is. But at this moment in time, it just hasn't been announced. There's not like a, hey, this guy, and maybe that'll come out during media day. So be sure to tune in next week and we can cover that.
You don't think they're going to get cooked every single week? What about week 0?
Yeah. Is getting 10 picks considered cooked? I think that's cooking. I think they're going to be doing the
Oh,
cooking.
okay. I'll leave you at that one, pretending that team is ready to roll. Gotcha. All right, you're next. You got the keys. Let's hear what I got to tell you about the secondary. I'm pretty hyped on them as well, but for different reasons. We'll tell you that next, right here on this Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones.
So Iowa State secondary, admittedly an area where I have question marks. It's not the most nailed down position group in my opinion. However, you've been throwing out little nuggets, little comments here, there. I'm finding them under baskets, underneath little tufts of grass, like an Easter egg hunt. I'm putting the pieces together and realizing, is Kansas State's secondary like maybe the strongest position group on the Wildcats? Are they going to completely shut down Iowa State's receiving game, or I guess passing game? Tell me, because it sounds like you're kind of hinting at it.
I don't know if we should go nuggets first. Maybe give you a little snack wrap since we're less than 10 days from the new snack wrap coming back to McDonald's, the revival. Right?
Yes, yes.
Maybe I gave you a snack wrap of appearance. Look, I don't know if I could say the secondary of Kansas State is the best position group, but I can arguably say that the Kansas State secondary is the biggest X factor for the wild card,
Ooh.
or excuse me, for the Wildcats in Big 12 title chase. I think that's the case. I think the secondary was a roller coaster last year, and I don't think any Kansas State fan can say otherwise. Even with 2 NFL picks, they had a 3rd rounder and a 5th rounder going into the NFL draft last year. Jacob Parrish, Marques Sigle. They're going to have some big plays where they're at in Tampa Bay and San Francisco. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. But a youth movement, that's what's here in Kansas State, and that's exciting. What we saw in the Rate Bowl last year with some of these cornerbacks that came in, like Zashon Rich, like Donovan McIntosh, Jack Fabrician, even. I think he's going to make some sort of bigger plays, maybe not as much of a bigger role as some of these others, but I really like that type of play from those players against Rutgers. That's going to be the biggest question. Who steps up to replace that NFL talent that they had last year? And is there still NFL talent on this roster as of right now? And I do think there's a few, to be completely honest with you. There's a quarterback room ready for the Big 12 gauntlet. That's a big question. Are they ready? Because this gauntlet's not starting week 5 like it normally does, right? It's starting week 0 against the Cyclones. Can the safeties stabilize the back end? Well, they brought in some players to hopefully do that. And will this young unit decide whether Kansas State wins the conference? The young unit is fun. It's exciting. It's got a fresh feeling to it. But with youth, usually sometimes brings rookie mistakes, right? We've heard that all the time when it comes to a youth movement, especially if we're replacing senior NFL talent that's on the 32 other teams right now in the big league. That's huge. There's major holes to replace Jacob Parrish and Marques Sigle, one in the cornerback position, one at the safety position. But despite that NFL talent, I think the secondary still struggled last year with communication. They let out some big plays in 2024. That's got to change, and they got to find some ways to fix that. I do think the defensive front, like you mentioned, which I'm excited to talk about that episode in a few weeks here, is loaded. And I think that will help a young secondary with reducing time and coverage. And I think that's where you and I come in the same play. But again, replacing NFL players isn't easy. But the hunger of depth in a young room may finally fix the inconsistencies that we saw last year, Nick.
Oh yeah, no, replacing NFL talent, they're NFL talent for a reason, right? And so you hope you can have that turnover, but it is a difficult thing to do. Not everyone makes it to the league. I'm curious, selfishly, you can preview the entire season if you'd like, but Iowa State will be playing Kansas State, and so I just am personally curious. Iowa State has a slew of receiving options. You've got running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. It's one of the things that I've talked about Iowa State having as a strength this season. At the wide receiver position alone, you've got Chase Sowell, who's standing at 6'4", and then Xavier Townsend, who's not quite that height, but seems to be a utility speed type of player. Guys coming out of the backfield, going to be a lot faster. Those tight ends, humongous, very large humans that are going to have large catch radiuses to bring down the ball. My question to you is, do you think that Kansas State could struggle in one area or the other? Do you know? Or is there a possibility that they're kind of across the board big and fast, and they'll be able to really kind of play Revis Island across the entire secondary?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see any type of like island type coverage. I think that there's going to be some really good coverage overall, but I don't know if I could just pick one guy to say, yeah, he's going to be able to shut another one down. I just don't know if that's what Kansas State's going to be playing this year. I don't know if that's what we're going
More
to
group
go for.
defense.
Yeah, I think that might happen, but we'll see. Obviously, we'll see in the future what happens. These young players can do so. Zashon Rich had a breakout game against Rutgers in the Rape Bowl. He was fearless, he was confident, and that's something we saw from a freshman that had hardly any playing time during the season. And it showed like he was playing all year in that Rape Bowl. That was exciting, knowing that he's most likely going to have a huge, a bigger role, probably right off the bat in Dublin. Then you have two awesome transfers, and which I think awesome is probably the word that is more of an optimistic awesome at one side. And on the other side, you've seen some proven talent. Let's start with the proven talent first. Amarion Fortenberry comes over after being a starter, a
Sweet
true
name.
freshman starter. Yeah, Amarion Fortenberry, good one, right? The Wild Fortenberries
Awesome name.
At South Alabama, true freshman, full year starter. He picked Kansas State over Houston, highly drived guy. I think he's mature beyond his age from what I've seen and what I've heard from him. He's got some FBS starts. He's got more starts than Rich and another young player on this roster in Donovan McIntosh. But when you talk about McIntosh, who was on the team last year, and then you talk about this other transfer who is not proven because he had some injuries, but he's coming from Oklahoma. He's coming from the Sooners, so he's been in a pretty good program for quite some time. McIntosh is 6'3". He's got length. He's got great flash potential. He flashed that late last season. And then Jaden Rowe is an absolute unit. We've heard some things from a defensive coordinator of Kansas State, how there's the potential that they want to move him to other positions. The linebacking coach are fighting to get him to play in the linebacking position, but he looks like he's going to be a corner, 6'2", 220, but he's got a 4.3 speed. Like, guy's super fast and physical. Health will obviously be a question for Jaden Rowe. If you put all that together and some returning players like Justice James have some experience and steady depth, if he starts his cornerback one early, that could be the question, and that might potentially be it. But I think by mid-season, now obviously that's not a week zero conversation, but by mid-season, I think Fortenberry and Rich could emerge as a top duo, not only just for Kansas State, but the top duo in the Big 12. And something that's really exciting about that, they'll both just be sophomores. And then you got Jaden Rowe rotating heavy if healthy. So I'm excited about the cornerback room. There's just a lot of question marks, but the potential, I think, is through the dang roof.
I have a quick question for you. It's a little bit of a hypothetical. Will Kansas State's secondary be so good that it forces teams to run, or will they come away with a just unbelievable amount of interceptions and pass breakups?
Man, I hope you're right. I mean, that would be a complete. If the secondary is so good that they are just shut down, then Kansas State's probably going 12-0. And we're not talking about can they win the Big 12. We're talking about can they win the college football national championship, because
Fair.
that was one of the biggest problems towards the end of the season last year when the wheels fell off and some of the other things. Even when they were starting 7-1, there were still some secondary issues. And what's crazy is they developed two NFL talent ready players as well. So if they are that good, that's a major improvement for Kansas State's defense next year. And with the offense, which we've talked about all last month, how improved that's been, I don't know if you touch Kansas State. So that's where I'm going to lean there. And I don't know if we should dig too far in the hypotheticals. We're both Big 12 teams. We're not SEC teams talking about this team could beat this team in a certain hypothetical conversation. Last point that I'll make here, and we keep talking about different players coming in. With the safety room, I think the safety room is going to be really cool. When you talk about NFL talent, and I kind of let off my segment with, I still think there's some NFL talent on this team. VJ Payne comes to mind. He's a returning leader. He's expected to take a big step next year. I think he has the tools, the skills, the ability, the physique to be an NFL talent player, where we're talking about him taking over Marques Sigle's role, basically, but probably being a better, higher draft pick than him. Sigle was a 5th-round draft pick. It would not shock me one bit if he's a 3rd or 4th-round pick or even higher come next year's draft. And then you bring in probably the best leadership ability in the Big 12, bringing Gunner Maldonado over from Arizona. Another injury concern. He's recovering from ACL, but if healthy, I think he's an all Big 12 caliber leader
Ooh.
on this roster. And that's something huge with all the inconsistencies and letting up the big plays. You're bringing in youth with talent, with speed, with size, and then you also add the leadership capability. Something that you mentioned could be a concern from Iowa State. I don't think that's going to be a problem for Kansas State in 2025.
Imagine an all-conference leadership team. That would be really cool. Really
Mm.
shout out those guys. They deserve it. It's not a super common trait to be like a super great leader, and I think that's what elevates teams to the next level. Will Kansas State have that? I don't know. When they compare to Iowa State, like Iowa State's just built different. Really, that's what it comes down to. All right, folks, thank you so much for not making this your secondary listen every day, but making this your primary listen every single day, either Locked On Kansas State or Locked On Cyclones or Locked On Podcast Network. You know it, your team every day. Have a good 4th. Stay safe. Enjoy the fireworks from a distance. That's going to do it for today's Locked On College crossover between Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Cyclones.
Who's got a better name? Is it Amarion Fortenberry or River Peppers? So far, we got all name teams going.
Is our team's the entire all name team?
Might be.